Hello, I'm Natalie Graves Tucker, and on behalf of AARP, I want to welcome you to this broadcast special report, Tips to Help Safeguard Yourself Against Scams This Fall. Before we begin, if you would like to listen to this program in Spanish, press *0 on your telephone keypad now.
Si usted desea escuchar en español, presione *y 0 en su teléfono ahora.
Today, we are going to help you recognize the 3 primary indicators of scams and provide you with examples of how to recognize different types of scams, including election scams, AI scams, and financial grooming scams. We are connecting with thousands of AARP members from across the nation and will be joined shortly by thought leaders who will take your questions live. AARP, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization with a membership, has been working to promote the health and well-being of older Americans for more than 60 years, and we are in your corner, fighting on issues that matter to you and your family. If you've participated in one of our Tele-Town halls before, you know this is similar to a radio talk show where you have the opportunity to ask questions and get answers from our guests. For those of you joining us on the phone, if you would like to ask a fraud or scam-related question, press *3 on your telephone to be connected with an AARP staff member who will note your name and question and place you in a queue to ask the question live. If you're joining on Facebook, you can post your questions in the comments. Hello. If you're just joining, I'm Natalie Graves Tucker, and on behalf of AARP, I want to welcome you to this important fraud discussion, tips to help safeguard yourself against scams this fall. Thank you for joining us today and participating in this Tele-Town hall. To ask your question, please press *3, and if you're joining on Facebook, you can post your question in the comments. Today, we're joined by 2 guests. Liz Buser is a senior advisor with AARP Fraud Prevention, and Dave Morrow, cyber fraud specialist with the AARP Fraud Watch Network and volunteer with the Alabama State Office. Liz and Dave, so happy to have you both with us today.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Now let's get started. As we are making our way out of summer and into fall, many people are thinking ahead to the upcoming election season and beyond. And while this can be an exciting time, personal information, money, and emotions can all be involved, and criminals are ready to take advantage. In this webinar, we will help you recognize the 3 primary indicators of scams. 1, unexpected communication. That, number 2, yields an emotional reaction. And 3, it involves urgency. We'll also provide you with examples of how to recognize different types of scams, including election scams, scams enhanced by AI, and financial grooming scams. We'll review ways to protect yourself, and we'll conclude with some resources you can turn to if you or a loved one has experienced fraud. And of course, we'll answer questions from you, our listeners. To ask your question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. Liz, let's start with you. Let's cover the basics before we dive in. How can we identify a scam from a real situation? What can we do to be proactive?
Thanks, Natalie. Many types of fraud follow a predictable pattern, and we think there's 3 elements that when they come together account for maybe 90% of all scam attempts. An unexpected communication that yields a heightened emotional response, and it involves urgency to act immediately. We need to figure out a way that we can all remember that when these 3 elements come together, we should immediately disengage. And there's a host of telltale scam signs in most fraud attempts, but for now, I want to really focus on these big 3. First, as we said, unexpected communication. So be wary of any out-of-the-blue contact. So, for example, you receive an unexpected phone call from a government authority, like your local sheriff's office or maybe the IRS or Social Security. That should raise a red flag, since government agencies don't call you out of the blue. And that brings us to the second red flag, that the communication yields a heightened emotional response. Criminals have great success with emotional manipulation. They know if they can quickly get their target into a heightened emotional state, then they've won. This is because when we're in that emotional place in our brains, it's not easy to access logical thinking. Scammers call this tactic getting their targets under the ether. When the criminal gets us under the ether, our emotions take over our brain's response to the situation, which blocks out a rational response. This is why to outsiders, scams seem so obvious. But we must remember that the victim couldn't access logic when they experienced the fraud. And the third red flag, it involves urgency. You must act immediately to address the situation, and it's usually accompanied by an ask for money. So here's a couple different examples of scams. Think of a scenario where you get a text from what appears to be your bank, asking if a recent large withdrawal was made by you. You respond no, and immediately you get a call from your bank that there's fraud happening in your account, and you need to take immediate action to protect your funds. Or another example, perhaps you're told you've reportedly won Publishers Clearinghouse, $1 million in a luxury car. But you have to act immediately and pay taxes up front to claim your winnings because time is running out. Or perhaps your utility company is supposedly calling you, claiming you haven't paid your bill and they're on their way to cut off your heat on the coldest day of the year. But you can solve the problem by paying the bill quickly. Just purchase a gift card and share the numbers off the back.
I see. By catching you off guard, generating a strong emotional reaction, and urging you to act quickly, scammers are much more likely to convince you to do what they want. Now that we know what red flags to look for, I want to address the scam techniques we are concerned about this fall and beyond. Scammers have only grown more sophisticated and will likely use this year's election to target your data and cash. Manipulating a candidate's statement, record, or image is a pretty common political practice, especially with political ads. But there are more direct ways that criminals are trying to target voters. Let's first talk about voter registration scams. Dave, what should voters be looking out for?
Well, a voter registration scam is basically any kind of scam involving getting you to register for vote or re-registering you to vote in order to get either your information or money or both. They often occur during voter registration drives at things such as festivals, farmers markets, and people can come up to you with a clipboard and say, hey, have you registered to vote? Let me help you. Sometimes they leave the filled out forms on tables where anybody can see them, so people need to use caution there because you put your personal information on there and anybody can take it from you. It could also involve links to fake voter registration forms, which scammers might send by phone or email or text. Almost always these links lead to phishing scams to collect your personal data like your social security number or maybe your passwords. They may allow others to access your devices that you're using, and they may, in some cases, require payment to assist you in completing your registration, and registration is always free. They could also offer to register you over the phone, call you up and say, hey, have you registered? If not, I'll help you. Or they may want you to download an app to your phone or your device for voter registration. But the problem is that's probably a malicious app, and it could allow cyber criminals to steal any data you have on your phone or personal data such as payment information or login credentials.
With an important election on the horizon, it sounds like it could confuse someone if you aren't sure if you're registered or just concerned about your registration status being in question. What can we do to protect ourselves?
Natalie, there's a couple tips for folks. So first of all, learn how to vote in your state. Voting's usually run by the state Secretary of State office. You can also learn more about absentee and early voting. And it's important to know the ID requirements and registration requirements in your state or district or territory. And please know you cannot register by phone, email, or text. And in all 50 states, you can only register to vote online, by mail, or in person at a local election office. The safest option is actually to register at a government location or to do so by mail. And if you do register online, do not use unsolicited links. As Dave mentioned, if engaging with legitimate registration tables at festivals, etc., a better option instead is to take the form, fill it out, and then mail it or deliver it in person to an election office. And finally, know how to lodge a complaint on suspicious voting activities.
All great information to help keep yourself safe. Thank you both. We have a lot more content to cover, but first, listeners, let's get to some of your questions about scams. To ask your question, just press *3. I'd now like to bring in Julio Rios Villena to help facilitate your calls. Welcome, Julio.
Hi, happy to be here.
Let's take our first question.
Our first question comes from Facebook, and Pete asks, I'm getting texts almost daily asking for contributions to a candidate I'm interested in supporting. How do I know if they are legit?
Thank you for that question on Facebook. Liz, do you have an answer for him?
Yeah, and Pete, that's a great question. The short answer is that you don't. But the best way to make sure your contribution goes to the person or the cause that you want to donate to is to go directly to their known legitimate website. And if you're thinking of donating to a political action committee, make sure you do your research on the group's website and double check to see if the PAC is registered. You can check with the Federal Election Commission for that at sec.gov.
All right. Julio, do we have another question?
Yes, we do. Our next question comes from Facebook as well, and Joe asks, I've had people canvassing my neighborhood, trying to get me to register to vote. I think I'm already registered. Why would they do this?
Thank you for that question, Joe, on Facebook. Dave, you have a response?
Posing as a voter registration worker is a pretty common ploy for voter registration scams. It can be used by scammers in several ways. They can use the forms they collect to take your person and use that for identity theft purposes. They can, quote unquote, as I said, help you fill out the form and then demand some form of payment after the fact. Advise you how to vote. Many states allow third parties to register voters, but some don't. And the best way you know if you're registered is to contact your state's election commission and ask them.
Thank you for that. Julio, do we have another one?
Yes, we have one more question from Facebook, and Shep asks, I'm interested in volunteering my time to support my candidate of choice. Is there anything that I need to worry about? They often require you to sign up ahead of time.
That's a good question, Shep. Thank you. Liz, do you have a response?
Well, Chef, the short answer is absolutely. There's things you need to worry about. Signing up for anything online, like volunteering, can easily be used as a cover for scammers looking to get personal information under the guise of, vetting activities, for example. Make sure you're comfortable with the organization that is asking for your personal data. And make sure you do your research. That's, I think, the key point. Do your research to make sure you're really on the group site, to make sure you're on their legitimate site before you give out any personal information. And if you're uncomfortable giving out the information, don't.
Thank you both, Liz and Dave, for answering our callers' questions. We will get back to the phone lines in just a moment. We've discussed ways to stay safe when considering voting and registration, but let's address some other things we may see during the election season. You may recall stories during the primary elections where people received voicemails that sounded like one of the candidates, but were actually an AI-generated voice. In response, the Federal Communications Commission issued a declaratory ruling in February that made voice cloning technology used in common robocall scams illegal. Despite the ruling, should voters remain on high alert for AI-generated audio, whether in phone calls or social media posts, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. Scammers are really unlikely to give a whole lot of thought to the fact that what they're doing is illegal, because by definition what they're doing is illegal. So they're probably not going to pay much attention to the FCC's declaration. And AI-generated audio or video is really a new frontier for scammers. I mean, scammers use every available tool, and they're constantly working on ways to adapt tools, and AI is just a really game changer for them in many ways. One genre of misinformation that we're kind of worried about a lot is fake audio. There's not many obvious red flags on whether something is false or not, especially with audio. But visual clues with video, things you see on the screen, can sometimes help you give indications whether or not it's fake.
That is good to know. Now, I want to talk more about artificial intelligence as we move through this conversation, but what are some things we should look for that will help us spot AI-generated audio or video?
Well, in video, now, with a caveat here, this is the current state of the art, and this is developing so quickly that some of these tips may be overcome by the technology in very short order, within a few months. But current video, AI technology often has problems rendering details and things like hands and ears and jaw lines in people. They don't like to show it in like 45-degree angles onto your face, for example. AI-generated videos, images often appear to be kind of flat or expressionless when speaking and have unnatural movements of their arms or hands or lips. They also sometimes don't blink or blink very irregularly. The backgrounds in some AI-generated videos at this point in time sometimes appear blurred or uneven or unevenly lit. Finally, there may be some incomplete or nonsensical things in the picture, such as extra arms, extra hands, arms with no hands, six-finger hands, things that appear in the background that don't belong there, things like that. Now, in audio, it's a little different because one of the things that audio technology for AI has really developed recently has been the fact that it can develop a voice copy with a very, very short clip of a recorded voice. But scammers will usually, as a practice, at this point, you'll only briefly hear the voice of whoever's being fake, because the longer the fake audio is, the more likely it is that the listener can recognize or hear that it's probably a fake. Oftentimes, the audio clone can't answer simple questions, so if you pose it a simple question, it's not ready for that. Sometimes they use strange or stilted language or speech, and they have statements in them, for example, that may reflect past events that are known to have turned out one way, but they state them incorrectly, or they don't seem to be reflecting past events in the recent past. It doesn't reflect current events. But again, remember though, AI is across the board is improving so quickly that some of what we look at as red flags now may be gone tomorrow as the technology gets better and better. But scammers can use fake audio and video for multiple purposes, from spreading misinformation to directing a voter to a fraudulent donation site or voting site.
We all know the mantra, if it's an unexpected call, don't engage. But what if we or a loved one can't resist picking up the phone, or a voicemail message has been left with important information about my polling place or candidate? How can we protect ourselves?
Well, Natalie, we should be suspicious of robocalls and confirm whether the information is accurate. If a robocall tells you that your polling place will be closed on Election Day, for example, do not believe it. Instead, follow up with your local election office. And if you receive a suspicious call from someone trying to influence your vote, the best thing to do is hang up the phone. Never trust a robocall that directs you to donate, and be skeptical of unexpected calls from someone who's claiming to be a politician or a celebrity. And finally, beware of fraudulent product endorsements.
Now, fundraising is a big part of our political landscape. Many want to donate money to support their candidate. Is this an area where criminals are also targeting us?
Yeah, quite often, cyber criminals will use fake audio of a celebrity or a candidate's voice and call you and request campaign contributions. The candidate may call you and ask for a donation and tell you to push a number on your phone, which connects you with a live representative who will take your information and take your money. Or an actual human may call you encouraging you to donate. You may also receive scam emails or texts with donation links, which are almost invariably phishing scams of some variety. And some solicitations now are coming from fake political action committees or political action committees that have just been set up for the sole purpose of gathering money. And like phony charities that raise money following natural disaster or large current events, they frequently seem credible and employ a lot of high-pressure and emotional appeals to get your money.
So is there anything you can do to protect yourself if you want to support a candidate in this way?
Yeah, first and foremost is to go to the candidate's site, their certified site, or the PAC's site, the Political Action Committee site, to make the donation. Don't ever respond to anybody emailing you or texting you or calling you. Once you're there, search and see if the PAC is registered if you're going to a PAC's website. If it's not legal. Don't answer any phone calls or any links to an email or a text that solicits your donation, especially or even if it's from somebody you recognize or you might think is reputable or maybe even a friend. And first and foremost, for all kinds of frauds, don't rely on caller ID. Solely. Caller ID is a good screening tool to help you if you're expecting a call or you're sure you know the person. But there's such a technique as spoofing that's widely used. I mean, almost every self-respecting cyber criminal uses spoofing, where they basically they have an app that allows them to make the phone number that appears on your screen, your caller ID, say anything they want to. So just be very cautious when you rely on caller ID. And if you think you recognize it, still have a little wariness about who this person is until you're sure. Another reason to not answer phone calls like this, though, is that cyber criminals only need a few seconds to record your voice, and then now, with the state of the art, as I said, they can use AI to create a dialogue that could authenticate you to as identify you to your financial institution or credit card company to get money taken out there. If you've been targeted by a scam or a candidate's scam, visit the Federal Election Commission's website and contact your local FBI field office and ask to speak to an election crimes coordinator. Or you can call our AARP Fraud Watch helpline at 877-908-3360 for assistance or advice in reporting.
Okay, I want to talk a bit more about AI technology. While we know that AI can be helpful if you're writing a resume or just want to have some fun creating art, it can also be used by criminals to target us. We've already talked about how the voices and faces of people you know can be impeccably faked. Dave, when we are talking about criminals using AI in an effort to steal your money or identity, can you tell us what we should be looking out for?
Sure. I mean, like I said earlier, criminals are using AI as a tool to make their job easier, getting money out of you or scamming you in whatever way. And they can use it to make almost any type of scam more believable and successful. Right now, what we're seeing most commonly is imposter or celebrity scams, where the scammer calls or texts or comes on a video saying they're so-and-so. We see a lot of voice scams, audio scams, on grandparent scams, where grandparents get a phone call at 2 a.m. saying it's their grandchild who's been locked up in Mexico and had a traffic accident or whatever in the child's voice. We see financial grooming or cybercurrency investment fraud. We see fake romance scams being used in voices of celebrities who are talking to their targets as if they're the celebrity. And finally, one of the most troubling things we're seeing now is in sextortion scams, where the FBI has warned that criminals will take photos and videos from children's or adults' social media sites and create explicit deepfake pictures, videos with their images to extort money or sexual favors from them. The voices and the faces of people you know or admire can be really impeccably fake these days as part of the effort to steal your money. And AI is just one of the new technologies. Cryptocurrency is another that's being used by criminals to make scams and frauds really more dangerous than ever. They impersonate businesses, and government offices, and celebrities, and even your loved ones, as we talked about in the grandparent scams. So the best way to protect yourself is to know the hallmarks of a scam and the steps that you can take to protect yourself. Scams evolve every year, but it doesn't mean you should be afraid, and the steps that you commonly take will protect you from a lot of the evolutionary results of AI.
It sounds like awareness may be one of the best ways to protect ourselves. Are there other ways to be cautious when considering AI is here to stay, Liz?
Absolutely, Natalie. So a couple of reminders for folks. First of all, don't answer the phone if you don't recognize the number or know who is calling you. Second, don't trust your caller ID. If you get a call from a business, do not answer the phone. Or if you did answer the phone, hang up and find the company's legitimate phone number and then call them directly. Another tip, don't use a search engine to find customer service contacts for companies or for government agencies. Go to their legitimate websites instead. And pause before you click. Never click on a link in an email or a text message without confirming that it's from a legitimate source. Another tip, don't click on ads to download software. Scammers also place ads on search engines. And scammers are increasingly demanding payment via cryptocurrency. Most often demand victims withdraw cash and then use a crypto ATM to deposit it into the scammer's crypto account. And remember, too, anyone asking you to pay with a gift card is a scammer. And if communication does seem to be from or about somebody you know, first of all, pause, take a breath, and if it's someone you've recently seen or spoken to, try asking them a question that only they would know the answer to, like, what did we have for dinner last night? Another tip, have a safe word. And if you get a call from somebody claiming to be your grandchild in distress, hang up the phone, call your grandchild or that loved one back directly. And make sure you guard your personal information, and don't share your personal information with someone that you know only from email or texting. Again, when in doubt, hang up the phone. And be sure to spread the word. Educate your loved ones on the latest scams and the advice that we've mentioned today, and report scams. If you spot a scam or you've been the victim of one, report it to law enforcement first. And then reach out to the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline. Our phone number is 877-908-3360.
Thank you. That was such important information for us all to understand. I know this discussion continues to prompt caller questions, so we'll be getting back to the phones in just a minute. Please press *3 on your telephone keypad now or anytime during the call to be connected with AARP staff. In addition to sharing important information, AARP advocates for issues like Social Security, Medicare, and, of course, fraud. I want to take a minute and bring in volunteer Bobby Savoy to share how AARP is fighting for you. Bobby is the Regional Volunteer Director, South Region, served as Volunteer State President of Louisiana, and is a winner of the prestigious Andrus Award for Service. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm happy to be here today, and this is just great information that we're sharing with our listeners.
Bobby, you worked for the Louisiana Department of Health almost 4 decades and now spend much of your time volunteering. Why is this work so important to you?
4 decades does seem like a long time, doesn't it? But I am passionate about volunteering with AARP because our members and others that we advocate for appreciate what it is that we do, whether that advocacy is with local, state, or national elected officials. I like to think that we give a voice to those who feel like they have no voice. and they're not being heard. They see results from our efforts and are thankful that AARP is there to protect Social Security, our retirement benefits, access to medical care, safety in nursing homes, affordable prescription drugs, and so much more in the things that we do.
That is wonderful. Today we're talking about fraud. So what is AARP fighting for on this front?
Education. Education is vital in protecting against fraud, but it's not enough on its own. Advocacy plays a key role as well, and AARP is urging the government to take stronger action, to fight fraud, to hold criminals accountable, and to safeguard Americans and their finances. This means pushing for tougher laws and regulations, which is why AARP is actively fighting for bipartisan legislation aimed at cracking down on scams that target seniors.
What are some of the other issues AARP is advocating for?
AARP is fighting to strengthen Medicare, to protect Social Security benefits, and to champion the rights of older Americans. In a historic victory, AARP recently led the charge for new Medicare prescription drug reform, which will save seniors thousands of dollars. We're also urging Congress to support family caregivers and to make communities more age-friendly and livable for seniors. We want every person to be able to age and live the way they want to.
Thank you for being here, Bobby. If listeners want to stay on top of AARP advocacy news, how can they receive the latest updates?
Join the fight. Go online to aarp.org/get involved and sign up for our free advocacy newsletter. Or, better yet, contact your AARP state office and become a volunteer. There are many ways you can work to make a difference.
That's aarp.org/get involved. Bobby, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for being with us today. Listeners, it's time to hear from you. Julio, let's take a call.
Yes, our next caller is, I believe it's Haley from Wisconsin.
Hello, Haley from Wisconsin. What is your question?
Pardon?
Haley? Hallie?
Hallie's the name.
Hello, Hallie. Sorry for mispronouncing your name. What is your question?
Well, I was just telling the other operator that our grandson, supposedly grandson, called me, said he was involved in an auto accident. And the woman was telling the police that he was drinking. But he didn't want me to call his dad. And when we hung up, I immediately called his dad. He called the company he worked for and found out he was at work. So I saved about $8,000.
I am so sorry that happened to you. Liz, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, well, first of all, Hallie, I am so proud of you. That is wonderful. You recognized the red flags. You hung up the phone. You went ahead instead of, you went ahead and trusted your gut, which was to, reach out to your loved one to verify that, your grandchild in this case was okay. So, listening to your gut certainly helps. A tip for everybody, if a family member calls to say that, they're in trouble and needs money, you can do what Hallie did. Hang up the phone, call the family member in question, work with family members or friends to make sure that your loved one is okay, and, be wary of any requests for payment. So a gold star for you today, Hallie.
Gold star indeed. Julio, do you have another question?
Yes, our next question comes from Facebook, and Lisa asks, what should you look for or be cautious of when you were giving your information? I have had 6 instances of fraud in the last year where my bank has had to give me a new debit card and charges are definitely not mine.
Thank you for that question, Lisa. I'm sorry that has happened to you. Liz?
Sure, and Lisa, I'm sorry as well that happened to you. I think there's a couple ways you can keep your financial information safe from scammers. One way is to add a fraud alert to your credit reports, which requires the lender to contact you before opening a new account in your name. You can also freeze your credit. And another way to do it is to save your passwords and to never give out your personal information to anybody that asks for it. And if you don't already have electronic access to your financial accounts, go ahead and sign up for that. It may sound counterintuitive, but, it's a great way to monitor your accounts, make sure everything is safe. And you can even set alerts to text you with each transaction, and you can track your activity in real time. But again, never share your personal or financial information because that's what scammers want.
Thank you. Julio, do we have another one?
Yes, our next question comes from Facebook, and Kat asks, my husband is that person who always answers the phone despite the caller ID, or answers the door without looking. How do I talk to him about scams and fraud?
Thank you for that question, Kat. Dave, any advice?
Yeah, this is particularly hard when we have a spouse or family member who just doesn't think, right, and just opens the door or answers the phone without even thinking about it. I would suggest, first of all, and I'm sure you've done some of this already, is just talk to them about scams, show them scam information. We have a lot of videos and information on our Fraud Watch Network website, and I think you'll get the link at the end. We have that. FBI has a lot of really good scam information on their website. And just try to get them to understand what's going on and that doing those types of things can be very dangerous to your financial well-being as well as your personal information. I would certainly, if it were my family member, I would certainly be hyper alert to the idea that they talk to somebody on the phone, and I'd be nosy and, who is that? What do they want? That kind of thing. Because it sounds like what some of the red flags are, and so you can basically, intercede and say, hey, well, this sounds like a scam. We need to drop off of this phone call or tell these people to go away, kind of thing. But this is pretty hard, and you might need to enlist other people too. Sometimes family members are counterintuitively kind of the worst people to talk to them because there's a lot of emotion involved in family relationships. But you can also get a friend, a clergy person, if you attend a church, a doctor, even a police officer or somebody in law enforcement, if you know them, to come and talk to you and talk to you about the different scams and talk to him about the different scams to give him kind of a non-biased, no strings attached kind of advice from somebody who works in that field all the time.
Thank you, Dave and Liz, for responding to our callers' questions. Such great questions from our callers. Now I want to touch on another term we often hear when discussing fraud, financial grooming. According to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, or CFTC, U.S. consumers had more than $3.5 billion stolen through financial romance and grooming scams in 2023. And that's just the losses that were reported. Can you dive into the term financial grooming and explain what it means, Liz?
Well, Natalie, techniques for grooming a victim for romance scams or financial scams are very similar. It involves building a trust relationship over time that then leads to a romance or an investment opportunity that ends badly. And often this scam begins by meeting someone on a dating or social media site, and it typically involves well-developed fake profiles and photos. And so a red flag to keep in mind is that the scammer almost immediately wants to move from a public dating or investment site to a more private text or other site so that they have more control and privacy. Alternately, it can begin with a text seemingly sent in error, and these texts seem innocent. It may be a text that sounds like they're planning dinner with a friend, but when the target tells them that they have the wrong number, they engage in conversation. And then a simple conversation begins a friendship, and over time, perhaps many weeks or months, That friendship then develops into a trust relationship.
And how does befriending you turn into a crime? Dave?
Well, once the scammer has earned the target's trust, they'll ease into talking about how successful they are in investing in cybercurrency, for example, or cryptocurrency. They'll convince the target to let them, teach them how that they can become rich too, and I'll teach you, I'll mentor you. And usually one of the first steps they'll do is either have them visit a crypto exchange website, sometimes, quite often it's a fake site, and establish an account there, or download a cryptocurrency app from a fake exchange. Then they get the target to invest small dollar amounts at first over time, and usually to gain the target's trust. These investments will appear to show amazing returns, 200 or 300% type things. And then the criminal leverages that for the next step, which is to talk to them about, hey, to make the real money here, you've got to invest more. And they invest more and more and more. But eventually, the target will decide it's time to cash out their investment and earnings, or they may be told that they have to pay a high tax or fees to access their money, or that they violated, quote unquote, some previously unknown rule of the site and owe the site a large amount of money or share of their earnings. And sadly, sometimes the entire site just disappears overnight. This is a technique we call the rug pull. And tragically, some people who are targeted go to great lengths to pay the alleged taxes to access their earnings, so they can, get their money. But they'll mortgage their houses. They'll cash in on retirement funds or drain their kids' college funds to do this. And sadly, when they finally recognize that this was a scam, the impact is really financially and emotionally really devastating. And these types of scams ruin lives. They tear families apart, and several targets tragically committed suicide over this because they were so despondent. So one thing everybody needs to know, though, is that these types of scams a lot of times are the domain of transnational criminal enterprises, because these types of scams are not something the average cyber criminal can pull off effectively. But the large criminal gangs, if you will, have the time and the workforce and the knowledge and what we call the playbook, the techniques, to turn their targets into victims repeatedly over and over again.
So now we're seeing those red flags again, right? Unexpected communication yields an emotional reaction and involves urgency. We know we should disengage, but are there steps we can take that might help us not engage in the first place? And what if it's too late? What if you've experienced fraud? Liz?
Well, Natalie, anyone who's been affected by fraud may be feeling hopeless right now, but we want them to know, please, you are not alone. What you are experiencing is not your fault. It is the criminal's fault. And so what you can do, a couple things. Contact your financial institution to see if there's a chance of stopping transactions that haven't been completed. Make sure you file a report with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. That website is ic3.gov. And then print it out and go to the nearest FBI field office to see if they can help you. And most importantly as well, get support. You can reach out to the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline at 877-908-3360. We have trained staff and volunteers who are available from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, who can help you. And the Fraud Watch Network also offers free support group sessions for victims of fraud and or their family members. They're confidential, facilitated peer discussion groups where you can meet with others who have been through similar experiences. And to learn more about that, you can go to aarp.org/fraud support. Experiencing fraud can be devastating, but please know it doesn't have to define you. So please reach out for support and know that you're not alone in what you're experiencing.
Great information to think about and share. Thank you. Let's get back to our listeners' questions. Julio, who do we have on the line?
Yes, our next caller is Shirley from Massachusetts.
Hello, Shirley from Massachusetts. What is your question? Shirley?
Yes,
Hi, what is your question?
I think somebody already answered my question earlier.
Okay. Do you want to ask it so the public can hear?
Yes, my question was regarding get a Medicare call every day, and they identify themselves as Medicare provider, and they're offering to provide me with free straps for arthritis pain. And in the beginning, when I first got the call, I felt that, this seems legit, it's Medicare provider, and I wasn't even thinking that Medicare doesn't call their customers or recipients. They just send you a letter for you to contact them. So, and they seem to know my information, like they knew my name, they knew my number, they knew my date of birth, or they knew, a few information that isn't really that significant. So then they were talking about, providing me with the free straps and stuff. I told them I didn't have any arthritis. They said, oh, well, that's good, but, you can get it free anyway, and we'll connect you to the order number or department, and they'll ask you 3 questions, and all you have to do is say yes. So I'm like, okay. So then when I got on the line and there was a different person answering the call, I abruptly asked them, is this a scam? And then the person said, no, we're not scammed. This is Medicare provider. So just answer the questions. And I'm like, I don't think so. And I hung up. And then since then they call me every day. And most of the time I hang up, but there are a few times, I think it was like 2-3 times, I asked them why they were calling, and I told them Medicare doesn't call their recipients. They would just send us letters, and then they hung up. And then another time I would say, Medicare, what's that? And then, or I would say, Medicaid? They said, no, Medicare. I'm like, I don't have that. Then there was like, you don't? And then they would just go on to say, well, what do you mean you don't? We should have record that, you have Medicare. I said, I don't have Medicare. I don't know what you're talking about. They said, are you 60 years old? And I'm like, no. And then they would abruptly hang up.
Got it,
So,
Shirley. Thank you so much for that story. Dave, do you want to give her any advice? I think she was doing well with that.
Yeah, good for you, Shirley, for catching on to the fact that it was probably a scam. One thing I would tell you to do is, since you say they call you every day from different numbers, is basically start screening your calls with that caller ID technique. Especially if you have voicemail. Most people have voicemail these days. And I tell people, look, just if you're not absolutely sure who it is, don't answer it. Let it roll over to voicemail. And if they're really serious about talking to you, they will leave a voicemail and ask you to call them back. But scammers won't ever leave a voicemail because they don't want to be recorded. So that's a good technique, and that's one I use, is basically if I don't recognize you, I don't answer the phone. Just know, again, as you saw, that Medicare providers don't call you out of the blue and say they have a free gift for you. Even if they seem to have some of your information, they probably have bought that from the dark web, which is awash with personal information, sadly, for sale. And they use that to make you believe that this is really Medicare calling you. But clearly, I would report this to the Social Security Administration, who administers Medicare, and I'd also report it to IC3, as Liz gave the website earlier today.
Thank you, Dave. Julio, any other callers?
Yes, our next caller is Lynn from Indiana.
Hi, Lynn. What is your question out there in Indiana?
Yes. Recently, I've received letters from a group called the Senior Center requesting donations to support them while they protect or offer a bill in Congress to protect our Social Security. And when I went online and looked them up or looked up about them, it said it was a scam. What do you know about this group?
Thank you for that question, Lynn in Indiana. Liz or Dave?
I can answer that. Lynn, thank you for flagging this for us. It certainly sounds like it's a type of imposter scam. What I would do is go ahead and reach out to the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline, 877-908-3360. Reporting is so important. And if you want, you can even share the letter with them, and they can help you determine whether or not it is legitimate. But it sounds like you did your research, saw that it's a scam, and so go ahead and ignore it and throw it out.
All right. Thank you for that. Julio, do we have another caller?
Yes, our next caller is Joan from Illinois.
Hi, Joan, out there in Illinois. What is your question?
Hello?
Yes, hi.
Yes. I'm trying to buy dental insurance, and I went online, and they only sell this type online, and they said I had to electronically sign my application, or they wouldn't process it. And to electronically sign it, you have to tell them your Social Security number and your name, and it's sent in. And when I called their customer service, I said, well, what do you do with my Social Security number? And they said, well, we just keep it in our files. And I thought, I'm getting uncomfortable with this. They don't really need my Social Security number, I don't think. And is this legitimate for an insurance company to ask for your
electronic signature?
Yeah.
Thank you for that question, Joan. Dave?
Yeah, this sounds pretty sketchy to me, Joan. I have done electronic signatures. I know the people that run security in many of those companies, and reputable electronic signatures offered by reputable companies is pretty safe. In fact, I bought my house that I'm talking to you from now using electronic signatures primarily. But the other things, you were right to call them and ask them what they did with it, and their responses kind of makes me think that the whole thing may be just a scam of some sort. The biggest question I would have you look at, I would think, advise you to do is look at the company that's offering it. I mean, if it's a reputable, known insurance company that offers dental insurance, and most the big insurance companies do offer some variety, then as long as you're sure you're talking to them, you're pretty safe doing the electronic signature business for insurance like that. But if it's somebody that only deals online and you've never heard anybody else, go to the Better Business Bureau and look on some of the scam sites on the internet, or just type in the company's name and the word scam or fraud after it and search, and see what comes up. You may be surprised or not surprised to find that there's a lot of information out there from people who have had problems with it. But I think you were exactly right on target to be real skeptical of these guys.
Thank you for that. Julio, do you have another one?
Yes, our next caller is Michael from Pennsylvania.
Hello, Michael, out there in Pennsylvania. What is your question?
I've, over the course of several months, a couple of years, every so often I get a letter claiming from some company or other saying, our computers have been hacked into, your information may have been compromised. You have 3 months to contact a certain phone number and we'll enroll you in some type of monitoring program. And are these things real or are they fake, and how can I tell the difference?
Thank you for that question. Liz?
Sure, that's a great question, Michael, and I've certainly received this type of letters as well. Some, to be frank, some are legitimate, some aren't. I think first step you can do, which I mentioned before, reach out to the Fraud Watch Network helpline, 877-908-3360. They can help you determine and help you do the research to find out whether it is or isn't legitimate. Another way that you can keep an eye on your financial accounts is to add a fraud alert to your credit report. You can choose to freeze your credit. Again, look at your online accounts. And you can always go to the Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and just keep an eye on things. And go to annualcreditreport.com to sign up for receiving that information, and just be vigilant, keep an eye on things, and when in doubt, reach out to the appropriate financial institution.
Thank you for that. Julio, do we have another one?
Yes, our next caller is Natalia from California.
Hi, Natalia. It's Natalie. What is your question?
Yes, hello. I am really worried. When ordering items on the computer network, we have to provide them with our credit card info. If it is a reputable company, are we protected from fraud using our credit information?
Thank you for that question. Dave, do you have a response?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's a reputable company, by federal law, you have certain protections. And you should always, if you're going to buy something online, don't use a debit card, because that's a hotline to your checking account, and you don't have near the legal protections that the Fair Credit Reporting Act includes with credit cards. So I would talk to your bank or the issuing institution for your credit card to find out the exact protections that you would have. But the key is to research those companies and make sure you only deal with reputable ones, or ones that have a pretty good reputation. Either ones clearly brick and mortar companies are usually pretty reliable. Or, like, as I said earlier to an earlier caller, type in the company's name and the word scam or fraud behind it, and do a search and see what kind of comments you find out there about people, or if you do find comments about people who have been victimized by these guys. But by and large, it's safe to use them if you just use them wisely and know certain protections.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yep. Our last caller here is William from North Carolina.
Hi, William. What is your question?
I spoke to the lady earlier. I recently, actually over the last quite few months, when I get a call, I will get a beep sound, and then the person will speak. Normally, it turns out to be a scam. Is that something that has been introduced as a protection for us that you are aware of?
Thank you for that question. Dave?
I've never heard of that, William. I mean, I believe that's probably a scam of some type. I would be really, really, really cautious, as you were being, and I wouldn't play. Unless there's something. I mean, what the beep usually means with reputable businesses is they're required, if they're recording your voice, to put a beep on the line every 10 seconds or something. And that's what the beep usually means. In this case, if they're asking you to repeat your name, I don't think that's a very good idea, just because you don't know who these guys are. Again, I would basically ignore them unless you recognize the caller ID. You can block, if it's coming from the same number, you can block it on your phone, and you can get somebody to show you how to block a caller. But if you don't have that, but you have voicemail, just let it go to voicemail and see if anybody calls you, because I think your intuition is right on. I think there's a problem.
All right. That is great advice. We have covered a lot about scams and the tactics they use. Of course, as technology evolves, so too do the scams. Dave, Liz, do you have any closing thoughts to share with the viewers? Dave, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our callers have shown this perfectly. Is the best defense you have is knowledge and trusting your gut. If the old saying is, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And most people have some level of antenna that tell them, hey, something's not right with this, something just doesn't jive. And listen to that voice. Listen to that little voice in your head that's sometimes screaming at you saying, don't do this, this is wrong. Because most people can avoid a lot of their problems if they basically listen to those little voices in their head that say, this is wrong, something's just not right about this, don't do it.
And Liz, any final thoughts?
Absolutely. Just to build on what Dave said, we always like to say if you can spot a scam, you can stop a scam. And there's actually research that's been done by Finner Investor Education Foundation that's shown if you know about a specific scam, you're 80% less likely to engage with the scammer. And if you do engage, you're 40% less likely to fall victim. But education is not going to get us out of this epidemic of fraud. And so AARP is leading efforts to make going after fraud rings a law enforcement priority. And we're also looking at ways to provide restitution to victims. And speaking of fraud victims, just a reminder, fraud victims deserve empathy and respect, not blame. And the responsibility for fraud is on the criminals. It's the criminals who are causing the problem, not the people they've manipulated to believe that something that wasn't true.
Listeners, thanks so much for joining us for this discussion today. Thank you so much, Dave and Liz, for joining us. And thank you to the AARP members who support the AARP Fraud Watch Network. We hope you enjoyed this special report and learned as much as I did. For more information and resources on the fight against fraud, we encourage you to visit aarp.org/fraud. That's aarp.org/fraud. The AARP Fraud Watch Network website is continually updated with new information, and you can sign up for AARP's Watchdog Alerts to stay informed of the latest scams. And don't forget, AARP is local, offering meaningful connections and enriching experiences close to home. To view those offerings, visit aarp.org/local. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. This concludes our call.